Good morning. It's January the 12th, 2026. It's about 10:10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for the record, I am Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, the Lord God of creation, the Elohim of the Bible. Today, we are going to be focusing on topics of righteousness and how it works along with politics, law, and just general governance of the world. So something that has been not sitting well with me over the weekend was the Greenland thing. When I initially set focus on Greenland, I was anticipating to have a much more positive response from not only NATO, Denmark, but Greenlanders. I thought that being a part of the United States would actually have been a benefit to everyone. I thought that would have been a win-win, as they say. Because in no way do I, as Elohim, encourage any actions from the Trump administration or America as a whole to become land grabbers. Because that's what Russia's doing, and a lot of these other bad actors. We don't want to be that. Instead, I was anticipating this to be a positive response and a negotiation. This in my desire was going to be something that was going to be approached with agreements, paperwork, potentially buying Greenland, but still, retaining the Greenlanders' current homes, their infrastructure, and then again, just essentially adding that layer of protection from the United States assets, and then it also guarantees the strategic position of NATO to ensure that if any point down the road Russia or China wanted to start staking claims in the Western Hemisphere, that would be off the table. Because what I was foreseeing is Greenland is so exposed, and to be quite honest, NATO without America isn't really NATO. There's not a whole lot of... America is what makes NATO so strong. And that's okay. America is taking the lead foot on most of these things. So that's where the initiative of obtaining Greenland, right, through purchase or through agreements, I felt was the route that we were going to go. But if the people of Denmark or the people of Greenland are feeling in any way like threatened, or that this is a conquering type of situation, then I would personally like to just bow out of it, and then we can look at other alternative avenues to secure that situation. I have to sneeze. We'll see who's getting the earthquake. Oh. All right, well, someone got an earthquake. I don't know, probably California. They haven't had one in a couple days. And that Gavin Newsom, I'm gonna make a note here. I'm gonna get to him. I'm not gonna jump around today. Okay. So, the diplomacy, again, when it comes to Greenland, is I would have liked to have seen some negotiations, PT, the AC, the PT. I thought, right, with the art of the deal, I thought that would have been something that he would have been better at. I do not like, and in fact I denounce, using military strategy for our allies. Like, that just seems, not only is it a bad idea, but it definitely doesn't shout from the mountaintops that we are friends of the free world. It doesn't shout from the rooftops that that we're not a tyrant. And America, if it is a tyrant, I'm going to undo its tyranny, but I don't think it is. I think America is the land of the free, right? It's the greatest nation on my creation. That's why I do stand behind it. And what makes America great, as we've spoken about this, it is the laws in which govern our land. And our laws are only effective when they are being followed by both the citizens and the political leaders. And so, if people are breaking into the country illegally, right? You're starting off any relationship illegally. You're never going to start a relationship in America by breaking a law. So that's why people that are illegally immigrated into our country need to go home, fill out the paperwork, and then they need to go through American training. They need to go through English speaking classes. And then above all else, they need to have a purpose here. So as I've said, and I stand behind this, it has nothing to do with race, creed, religion, or color. Absolutely not. I would be perfectly fine if a bright, brilliant Muslim man or woman, right, who had no intentions of harming U.S. citizens or, doing any nefarious acts. I have no problem with anybody of any race, religion, creed, color, whatever, as long as they're contributing positively to American culture, American values, and they're going to uphold the law. Now, righteousness, remember, it starts on the individual level. So if an individual is not able to compute, meaning like they're not able to recognize that by starting a relationship off in a country through an illegal act, that is where you instantly come on my proverbial shit list. Because that would be like, there is no level of trust that A, could be established, and then 2, by circumventing our law system, who loses the most? The American citizen loses the most. A very quick story. When I was, I don't even know how long, 15 years ago, I was exploring an idea of going to like hair school. I know, funny, because I don't have any. But, I just wanted a small type of job that I could work independently. And I do like interacting with people on a limited basis, right? Not usually for too long. That's kind of my thing, is I like short, kind of quick interactions, and then that's really it. More or less, I'm very much of an introvert. My wife is an introvert. So that's what I mean. Like, I keep, communication to people, like, at the grocery store, right? Very brief, in between, stuff like that. So I just thought being a barber might have been a good path for me at one time. Well, the point of the story is, when I went through a 2-week preview, and then after the preview, I had to commit to, like, $14,000 for a student loan. And then I remember having that conversation in the financial office, and then I had to think about it. So I went to walk outside, and I noticed a couple of guys there my age. Well, I overheard them talking that they were going to essentially go to college for free, and they weren't even here legally, and that was why they went to college for free. And it did more than upset me. I didn't even end up going to school because I was so worried about the amount of debt I was going to be carrying, and then the type of job I was going to have was not a very high-paying job. So at the end of the day, barbers don't make much, right? Between $25,000 and $35,000, and then having to finance a $14,000 education on top of the normal bills that I would have. So my point is that put me out of the running. If those guys weren't there and they weren't getting free education, who knows where my path would have taken. So I'm speaking to you carnally about this because I want to also be relatable. That I don't just sit on the clouds and I don't just sit on high assuming things. Because as the old adage goes, right? When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So as Elohim, the part of my incarnations is to experience human life for all of its areas, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. Good movie. Good, bad, the ugly. And that's so I can fully understand from both sides, right? Running through each of these things just first-handedly so I can make an accurate judgment. If I don't have enough information to make a judgment, then that is a case, and then that requires investigation and follow-up. So rounding this out, we as a nation have laws, and those laws are hugely important for lawmakers, because if any time a lawmaker is going out and stumping, meaning they are traveling to the nouns, they're seeing people, they're going to places, and they're doing things, to try to spread what they're going to do in terms of changing the law. Well, there are certain things the Constitution continues to uphold that are essentially, in my eyes, unbreakable, right? We don't want to mess with Americans' right to free speech. It's what makes America great. But there are things that on the individual level, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And some of these things are reserved for very specific situations. We do not need to be abusing constitutional rights just because we can wiggle ourselves into that equation. So it is a crime to live in America, right? Unless you are a documented citizen. First and foremost. Second off, to immigrate to America, you must have a reason and a purpose. You cannot come here and then expect free education, expect food stamps. I don't want to invite freeloaders to my home. That's stupid. It doesn't matter what country you're in. No person in their right mind wants to invite freeloaders, because think of this. Think of your own home. Think of your own home as a man or a woman, child, son, daughter, right? If, let's say in this situation, right, Asherah works very, very hard to keep money in the bank, food in the fridge, and all the amenities that me as her husband, but our kids, we've come to not only enjoy, but we've also come to expect, right? It's called a lifestyle expectation. Now, if we just open our door because somebody told me a sad story and that, okay, fine, then you can have this area of my house. Now my food consumption's disrupted. Here's another person, and here's another person, and here's another person. Well, what happens is it begins to mess with the pH level. So the pH level, meaning when the fish aquarium is balanced and all things are right, it's clean, it's clear, the fish are happy, there's no disease. When we're adding in these unbalancing measures, right? Illegal immigrants are an unbalancing measure. And right now we have a huge number of them. So, as laws are, right? Because if you stand in front of a judge, everyone has a unique case, right? Everyone who stands before a judge claims they have a unique reason for why they broke the law. Most of the time, I've literally listened to court cases. I've made judgments in court, in spirit, while the person is literally standing in front of a judge. So, I'm saying that I understand that, leaders are trying to, again, gain support with the illegal immigrants. But guys, I'm here to tell you, voter ID is required to vote. That is absolutely stupid. I would love to, and maybe I will do this, but maybe I won't, because if I did it, I might change history. It happens. But I want to go back in time, and I want to just punch the person in the face, whoever came up with this, people who vote don't need ID. Because if there are illegal immigrants that are voting, or there's corruption anywhere, any place, any corruption anywhere, any place, any time needs to be handled. The United States of America is fully equipped. Why? Because they have the laws. The laws are what ensures the sovereignty of America. The laws ensure that every lawmaker in every province in the United States of America is on the same train no matter what. So lawmakers, and again, I don't know where this comes from, lawmakers have had it in their mind that somehow they are little kings and queens. That's what's funny. A lot of the Democrats are holding no king protest signs, but guess what's happening in your own districts? You have kings of Minneapolis who are saying, we don't give a shit about America. We're Minneapolis. We're going to say fuck you to ICE, and we want the illegal immigrant vote, and we're happy with that. Well, you, sir, ma'am, should go to federal prison because you are a traitor against the United States of America. Before taking office, you should have learned the laws of the Constitution of the United States of America. You should have also discovered and learned all of the laws of municipality, city, state. You should know the law better than anybody. Because when a situation arises and people come knocking on your door, lawmakers, your door, Jacob Frey, your door, Osio Cortez and Mom Donnie, and you little band of essentially like de factos, not to, and that's what I mean. You're not de factoing Trump. You're de factoing the constitutional laws of America that have been passed by the Supreme Court. Now, as an Elohim of law and order and justice, I, as a U.S. citizen and God, follow the laws of my land. If it is illegal to do it, I don't do it. And I instruct my family on that as well. Even if there are laws that, even collectively, that I as God think are stupid. I mean, it's my own creation. I think it's stupid. I have to pay money to go to a public park. Does that mean that I'm going to show up at that park? And granted, by me as Elohim, do have that right. If I wanted to be a what I would call like a prick, I would never do that, you see? That would be setting a bad example for the other people. That if I have to pay the money for the park, or I have to, whatever, I'm saying that's the laws that were passed. I'm going to obey the laws. And again, that's what I mean. So if I, myself, teach my family how to uphold the law and also interacting with the law, right? My children know in the future when they're driving, if they're ever pulled over, they're supposed to put the car in park, right? Turn the vehicle off. Keep your hands on the steering wheel until the officer has spoken to you. Then he will direct you on what he wants. And you know what I mean? It's a very good interaction because my kids are in no way, shape, or form ever going to try to harm or hurt anyone in general. But they don't want a police officer to be fearful of a situation and then something bad happens by accident or unintentional. I don't like the fact that there are still protests, and again, that is your right to protest. But when you have federal agents, officers that are being harassed, and people are following them, that is actually breaking the law. Because peaceful assembly, you're supposed to have permits to be able to protest, and usually it's in front of courthouses, it's in front of the White House, it's in front of Capitol Hill. It's in front of Planned Parenthood. You have to apply for permits, have that, and then you know what? As a protester, you also get to be safe while you're protesting. You want law enforcement to ensure that your protest is also protected. You see how that works both ways. When you are crossing the line, that looks like following ICE officers around. That looks like trying to put into conscription lawmakers that side with illegal immigrants over United States citizens. You're trying to caress and pay for, like Tim Walz, right? Receiving under the door money for his campaigns. He's received underground money for all kinds of things, and it's not just him. Gavin Newsom, why I have my note down there. When we're talking about one of, if not the most corrupt political influencers or people in current office, Gavin Newsom, if not makes first, he makes second on that page. I, as Elohim, can put you on the trail and you can go sniff that out, because Kash Patel, I put you in that one directly, because there is a lot of fraud happening in California. Guys, California isn't just expensive because of really nice real estate. California is expensive, and I'll tell this for the modern people how this works. Let's say the United States government gives $1 billion to California and says, make sure there's water in reserves for wildfires. Make sure that there are subsidies going out to farmers that are growing the local food and growing big percentages of food for the country. When the federal government is allocating money to a state, it is up to people like Gavin Newsom to ensure those funds hit the accounts, and the end goal, what the federal government is buying, happens. More than not, 8 to 9 out of 10 times what happens is people like Gavin Newsom, they abuse that money, they pay themselves through essentially money laundering, and they pump money into whatever fund they feel like doing. And then they spend a ton of more money on covering it up. So at the end of the day, who is losing? The American farmer loses. The true American citizen dropping his kids off rightfully at school and then going to work his 12-hour shift, because I'm really sick and tired of hearing the Democratic narrative that other than breaking the law, other than destabilizing America, other than, they're not bad, right? He's going to go make $10 an hour and he's such a hard worker. I frankly don't want illegals in the country. White, black, green, yellow, I don't care. But number two, it adds insult to injury that as the governing body, me, Yahweh Elohim, governing from heaven to earth, but now governing on earth, it is a slap in my face that when I see rogue states, because you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me, whenever I see people like Jacob Frey, I see Maduros. I see people willing to break the laws of the United States of America on behalf of illegal immigrants. Just like Maduro was willing to break the laws of Venezuela to appease cartels, because cartels are essentially selling their narrative that this is the way to prosperity, this is, you know what I mean? That only seems crazy to people because the narrative in our country is you have lawmakers and leaders willing to basically put the United States flag, the Constitution, and its laws on an altar of sacrifice because they want your vote. They want to make sure that you're happy. And unfortunately, most people, are not very smart. Most people in this country are very lazy because they have been spoiled. The amount of freedoms that America has and its citizens have is unprecedented in the world. Even with right now, Iranians, right, they're trying to become free, but they even understand they're self-aware enough to know that they're never going to be as free as the United States Americans are. They're hoping to get something close to us. So for people like, I can't remember her name, the lady who got shot. She was not in a peaceful protest. She was not behind a permitted, sanctioned event. In fact, she was following ICE around. And again, if these people aren't working, if the other 85 to 90% of the political spectrum is at work, they're legal, they're not protesting, why again is America trying to buckle and cater to illegals? Why are we bucking and caving to those parts of the population that actually contribute nothing? Do you understand? I do not like to group things in because my wife has told me that I have a bad habit at, very largely just roping everyone in. So I try not to do that, but in this case, it's very hard not to when every Democratic lawmaker, every Democratic representative, from mayor to governor to senator to congressman, every time they're in front of a camera, it looks like dictators to me. Every time I see people like Jacob Frey or Mamdani, I literally see the seeds of a dictator. And why? Think about what they're doing. They're saying, we don't care about America's law. This is the Wild West. We want illegal immigrants. Guess what? We like this man. We like this woman. We don't care that our crime is through the roof. We don't care that we have a shortage of everything. Guys, because when you start to investigate, you find out what they're actually hiding behind. They understand that they're never going to get away with money laundering with constitutional Americans. Constitutional Americans. That's not left or right. That is American. That means they believe in the First, Second, Third, Fourth Amendments. They believe in that our country is a free republic democracy. That means that I, as a father, but also as a U.S. citizen, excluding me being God for a moment, if I have something I need done, such as a new stoplight near my kid's school, I can have my voice heard by writing my congressman. If I have a view and a vision of America and a candidate comes down the pipe, and of course all these people should be starting at a minimum bar of law abiding for the country's laws. People, it is a federal law to be in America without being a proper migrant. And you have not lawmakers, you have lawbreakers that are not only preaching, but they are literally preventing federal law from being carried out in their area because they're trying to protect illegal immigrants. This is a fugazi. And it may seem like this is somehow the right thing to do. Guys, these laws are there for a reason. They're there to protect American citizens. They're there to continue our country's stability. And they are, at the end of the day, well, we already are. We're the envy of the world. No other country has freedom like America. Guys, there's no other country, like virtually in the world, that you can basically shoot fireworks in the sky like America. Like, there is virtually no other country that you can buy a piece of land and decide your future, do whatever you want, virtually build whatever you want. I mean, obviously, doing it properly, but I mean, like, you don't have a China situation that, unless you're born into the Chinese royalty, like, you're a slummer, basically, right? Most of the success in China is funneled within about 9 families, and they're all tied up to the top political party. The rest of these millions and millions of Chinese people, just normal everyday folks, they're basically living like pack mules. Like, they live like 50 people to an apartment the size of like a 1-family apartment in America. That's true, guys. Their kitchens are smaller than most Americans' home office desk. That's a fact. So when I say America's unique, America's very unique. And at this juncture in America, I'm very, very concerned with a lot of political leaders right now. And to be quite frank, as God, I have a lot of things that mankind don't, but I also have something that tells me the temperature of where things are at. And America is notorious for underground, what I call like underground growth. When you're looking at protests, me, Ashura, and the kids were just running through the area of like Trinity in Florida the other day, doing something, and there were protests out there protesting the Minneapolis shooting. Well, it's funny because when you watch things on the news, right, I feel like they do these video takes where it makes it look like there must be thousands of people out there. Guys, when we were driving, there was probably less than 50 people out there actually. And you're talking about areas in Florida that, I mean, collectively, let's take a look. Yeah, so 8.88 million people live within a 100-mile radius of where that protest was. And you're telling me out of 8.8 million people, you got about 50. And all 50 of them, again, that's what I mean, is they're uneducated. These are the kind of people that they're kind of like robots. They're like people that lawmaker says, you go out there and you hold that sign and you tell President Trump you hate him. That person just nods and takes a check, and then they cash their check, hold their sign, and they're looking at their watch because they're paid. Guys, I've said this. George Soros has been funding leftist movements for a very long time. The Gavin Newsom schemes that are about to come down the funnel, Mayor Bass, her schemes, Kamala Harris. I mean, there's a lot of you that are about to fall from grace hard because of the fraud, waste, and abuse that you have committed against your fellow Americans. You've done that selfishly. You've done that just like Maduro looked out for the special interest of cartels versus the Venezuelan people. Democrats are looking out for the special interest in immigrant minority versus the American people. Immigrant laws are going to be a part of the Constitution. That is one of my biggest pushes. If I can accomplish that before PT leaves office, that will be one of my greatest accomplishments, because America must forever be secure. There must be one door into the United States. That is through an Ellis Island type where people are applying. And guess what? Not everyone's going to get in, because, again, I don't need to fill work positions at the local 7-Eleven. I have Americans that need that job. And people go, well, Americans don't want to go and pick strawberries and they don't want to go and do this. Guys, I'm here to tell you, There is no place for illegal immigration. There is no place for tax evasion. There is no place for fraud, waste, and abuse. There is no time or place in America for criminals, period. Nor American criminals or illegal criminals. And that's what I mean is if I can get, let's take a look here. I'm going to take a break here in just a minute, but I'm going to take a look here. Wow. That's a lot more than even I thought. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, so I checked a few different sources. Pew Research. So that's, I believe, well, I don't believe, I know, that's one of the most trusted sources for information like this. Pew is reporting, as of 2023, 14.2 million undocumented Americans are living, undocumented illegal immigrants are living in America. That is enormous. And these people are using daycare funds. They're using SNAP food benefits. They're using Obamacare. And guess what? And these people, you're talking about the bottom 10% of society, the dregs. They're here illegally. They don't obey the laws. These are the people hanging out next to gas stations when they should be at work. They're dealing drugs instead of getting jobs. If they're getting jobs, they're getting really non-productive jobs. Because, guys, I need to take, as God, I need to say, I need 14.2 million of whatever it is these people are occupying their time with. I need those people illegal out of my country so I can take the bottom 10% of Americans who I go, okay, Billy Bob, you know, you didn't go to college. You don't really have anything on the ball. You're not a criminal, at least. Here, let me hook you up with, you know, a job here. Okay, let me put your path in this job. And then if the government needs to help subsidize some food or some housing, then guess what? At least if I'm extending charity to my own people. That's a fact, right? Coming right back full circle, and then I'll take my first break. But so imagine, right? Me and Asherah come home, and the house is full of a bunch of just my kids as friends, right? And we come in, the fridge is empty, the house is destroyed. What am I going to do? Am I going to tell my kids to leave? No, they're U.S. citizens. Their asses are going to stay here and help me clean up. That means citizens need to say, if I have an illegal friend or I have an illegal spouse, husband, children, I don't care, guys, anything, a human being that is not here the right way, American citizens need to be helping ICE agents. You need to be helping the federal government and saying, guys, we need to get them out of here. We have Americans, we have veterans, we have every walk of life that are American citizens. That means they are my problem. As Elohim, they are my problem. I need to take care of them. And guess what? Just like Venezuela is happening, just like Iran is happening, I as Elohim am going to ensure every country is either going to straighten up, start obeying laws for their own citizens, or that person, that dictator, is going to be removed, and then a republic is going to be put in place. That's the plan. That's my grand plan. Like, as God, that's what I'm doing. People have said, well, that's what Mashiach's supposed to do. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm God. I'm Yahweh. That is what it is. And I'm the one sitting at the top directing people like Trump, people like Rubio, people like Netanyahu, and the list kind of goes on from there. But I'm saying I'm the one that is seeing a problem, I'm carving a path, I'm winding people like Trump up and letting them go walk, you know, like a little wind-up toy. It's like, that's how I'm operating. All right, 34 minutes. I'll take a 5, and then we will regroup. And we're back. So, carrying on, just really reinforcing this, because leadership is a lot more than what people believe it is to be. Unfortunately, a lot of times people in leadership positions, they seek to serve their own agenda and their own outcomes. And they don't actually stop to think about the damage they do to their community and their constituents that really matter. Because like I said, right, if me and Asherah are coming into the house and there's 50 kids here and only 2 of those kids are mine, I'm kicking 48 kids out of my house. I'm not interested in how good or bad or anything. The number one thing is they don't belong in my house. And then once I get them out, I'm going to look at who's left and I'm going to say, now we're going to clean up your act. And as lawmakers, you need to be doing the same thing. Because if we continue to have a fractured mindset where mayors, senators, congressmen, governors, whatever, if they are defiant against the laws that they are elected to uphold, constitutionally speaking, then you are a traitor of America, right? You are a dictator, and you're using your state and your political influence to essentially condemn America. Now, just 70 years ago, people like Gavin Newsom and people like Jacob Frey and people that are upholding anti-ICE, anti-agent, anti-law, they would have been put in handcuffs and they would be going in front of a judge. Because that would be the equivalent of saying someone gets a job at McDonald's, but they just wanted the job at McDonald's because as soon as they get in there, they're going to start telling all their employees, hey, don't make French fries. Bro, don't make French fries. And McDonald's, on the other hand, is like, man, I'm making millions of dollars on French fries. Like, half of my business comes from people liking my French fries. You're telling people not to make French fries because you don't like French fries. You see what I mean? The McDonald's Corporation would fire that person. Like, it wouldn't, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're not on board with America, its constitution, and its laws, then why are you an elected official? Who elected you to be an official? That's the next question, right? So then who is electing politicians to be defiant against the United States law? That is called special interest. And again, this points directly back to how dictatorships begin. It begins when people of influence like Newsom and Bass and Harris and Waltz and all these bad actors, it comes down to that, right? They seek after illegals because they essentially know how to abuse them. In the sex trafficking trade, they call it grooming. In the political trafficking trade, it's called grooming. These people are grooming the worst parts of society, most of which aren't even here legally, and they're telling these people, like, screw the law. You're more important than the law. Your story is more important than the laws that keep our country sovereign and keep us free and keep us the envy of the world. Those people do not deserve to be elected officials. They don't even deserve to be on the ballot, to be quite frank with you. And I would say if I had it my way, but I will have it my way, right? Because I'm the creator. I am Yahweh in the flesh. That means my will be done. Lawmakers of any branch, left, right, or middle, the first and number one most important thing is you are an arm of the United States government. You are an arm. And if you don't want to be an arm of the government, then you should not have gotten into politics. Next, peaceful protest requires permitting. And then when you get permitting, you also have protections from the police in which you're currently protesting. You can't protest laws that exist, number one. So that's a fugazi, right? If you want to overturn things like Roe versus Wade, if you want to overturn, those are things that, again, I, as Elohim, have told you how to solve it, right? Abstaining from sex in general. Sex is not an extracurricular activity. It is something that you procreate, and when you procreate, you're creating dynasty and you're creating legacy. People, by having children, you are also making an investment into my creation. You are investing into me, your Elohim. Because when a family, and that's what I mean, when I pull up my list, and I do this on a regular basis, I pull up my list and I can actually see every pregnant woman in the entire world. That's fact. So I'm trying to line up good, solid crops for them to have healthy babies Healthy babies turn into productive young people, smart young people, and then those smart young people turn into smart, hardworking, ambitious people that are going to bring more enlightenment into our country. They're going to bring more of all the good stuff we want. Like I made the example, right? Nikola Tesla was an immigrant. He came over with pennies in his pocket and a letter to Thomas Edison. And Nikola Tesla forever changed not only America, but the world for the betterment. That is an amazing immigrant. I want 10 more Nikola Teslas. Truly. Again, I don't want people that are coming to my house and I look around and I go, kids, there's 2 of you and there's 48 of them. 48 of them have just eaten all our groceries. They've ran up the water and light bill. They've trashed the house. They've trashed the yard. And you, as the 2 kids that are supposed to be in the home, you should have known better. Right? When I left you in charge, you should have known better. When all of you who have been elected, and you have been elected under my name in whatever form you have called me, you see what I mean? I'm just trying to break through the minutia here. Whether you call me Yahweh, whether you call me Jesus, whether you call me Joshua, whether you call me Yahushua, whatever. At the end of the day, I'm the creator in the flesh, but I base civilization on laws. Laws also stem from the spiritual influence of why planets orbit and don't fall. It is because there is a law that I have given it called laws of physics. The laws of physics are unchangeable and unbreakable by only me. I, as Elohim, do not even break those laws because it could destabilize everything. If lawmakers could adopt that same understanding, you can have compassion, you can have care, you can have concern, but that all of that is a personal side. When you are a face or a voice for America in any capacity, you stand in solidarity with America first. There have been men and women who have died on foreign battlefields to ensure that the laws of our land are upheld, to ensure that American democracy and freedom lives to fight another day. And it is a slap in the face to all those who have bled and died for this country to then sacrifice our laws, our country, and our nation to the worst of the worst. So truly, if we're talking about a turning point, this does start from the bottom to the top, because at the top can reach down to the bottom and say, hey, we're going to have a talk. It might not be easy, but this is what must happen. And the bottom, the same way. The bottom needs to look down their line and go, you know, friends, family, colleagues, citizens, we're going to have a talk. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to have that talk. Because, guys, the line of right and wrong is not blurry. The line of right and wrong is not gray, as Democrats and lawless ones tell you, right? People have confused and said, well, if you believe in me, that somehow you circumvent, like, you know, you're not saved by works. Guys, it isn't that you're saved by going to an altar and lighting an incense. That's not what that means, guys. It is not works that you're saved by. It is discipline to the law. It is saying, because as the Heavenly Father, right? That's what I mean. You have to understand how I operate, how I think, and then it's a lot easier for you to know where you fall in. So, if I look at the earth as one big house, which I do, and I look at elected leaders that have been elected by civilians, okay, that means you are being entrusted with a position of like house manager. How well are you managing your house? I have given you a set of laws that I have worked all the way back from George Washington, all the way till now. Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, these players are no small footnote. These players have truly been divinely inspired by me, Yahweh Elohim, to establish laws that give America a set apart level of freedom that the entire world mostly will never know. Mostly will never know. I'm going to try my hardest to get it close, because Iran is going through its revolution. Again, this is not done. It's not a fugazi. So when I'm telling the world my will, my desire, that is the God effect, right? As I'm kind of dubbing it, the pizza effect. I see the Iranians, I see they want to be free from Khomeini. As Elohim, I want nothing more than Iran to be a free republic democracy. My hesitation right now when it comes to Iran, and this has nothing to do with religious preference, because I'm a little irritated that Iranians are essentially idolatry at this point, right? They're calling for President Trump. They're singing songs about President Trump. That goes against me as Elohim, because you're inflating a man's ego. Again, a man that someday, not soon, but President Trump, love him, hate him, or whatever, he's still a man, and he still is going to stand judgment in front of me. I'm trying really hard to keep President Trump clean so he truly can move on to his next life. And you know what I mean? I want nothing more than to give him a pat on the back and say, hey, it's been a ride, PT, but here you are. You know, here's the heavenly gates. Go be good. That's what I want. I don't want anyone to go to hell. I don't want anyone to go to the abyss. It's not needed. It's not needed. But people still go there because they don't understand my law, the 10 Commandments. They don't understand America's laws that are there for safety and for security and sovereignty, right? So rule breakers jeopardize themselves because they incur sin. Guys, sin is literally you're getting cases. Like if you're a criminal and you catch a case and you got to go to court because you did a naughty, when you break a commandment, lying, idolatry, covenanting, lying, and again, and those are just the 10 basics. Like each one of those have an expansion, right? Like greed is a sin. Gluttony is a sin. All these things are incurred because most of the time it's lack of knowledge. The exact same thing happens with most of these things. So we have to solve it from the top and the bottom. And when we begin to burn the rope at both ends, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because we're going to be burning the rope at both ends. That means we're going to be getting rid of the impurities. 14.2 million impurities we need to get rid of. Once we remove 14.2 million impurities, that's 14.2 Americans that have now just leveled back up. And as the government, as the head of the government, me, I'm going to be able to say, now, let's run some numbers. What am I having income-wise through tariffs? What do I have income-wise through all of our interest in around the world? How am I going to ensure that my bottom 10% is still going to be better off than the top 25% in any other country in the world? People could argue and say, well, Yahweh, wouldn't that actually like promote laziness? No, because I'll tell you what, ambitious people don't need to be told to go do something. Ambitious people are ambitious people. Likewise, lazy people are lazy people. It's very hard to make a lazy person ambitious, but it is almost impossible to make an ambitious person lazy. So that's where we can take then our own 14.2 million bottom 10% and say, okay, we do have plenty of money to ensure that those kids are housed, those kids are fed, the parents need to have some level of employment, whether it's working the 7, whether it's digging ditches, whatever it is. But I mean, that's a big gap, guys. So we gotta fill that gap. And back to Iran. So options when it comes to Iran, I see that the Shah, the son of the prince, or the son of the king, like 47 years ago, is wanting to come back and be a constitutional monarchy. I am hesitant and apprehensive because I feel that it could be a scenario where we're just trading one dictator for essentially another one. So that is, again, an Iranian decision to be made. If that is truly what you want, then, have at it. My only fear again is you're then putting an entire nation under another king. So I would rather see a republic democracy that when Khomeini falls, the IRGC is completely snuffed out, that the people are then left with a clean slate. And instead of just stuffing a king in there because it gives people a nostalgic effect, that I would suggest you think very long and very hard at what is going to be Iran's true future. Is Iran going to have a future when what a democracy is? So I'll give you an example, or not an example, but for my constituents that don't understand fully what a democracy is. A democracy says that we're going to have a vote for virtually everything. So we're going to have a local vote because we have $1 million. Raise your hand if you want to build a clean water tower or a clean water program. Or should we use the money to work on the food program? Or should we work on that, right? All the money, the people get to have a choice in where the money goes. And then the good thing is, most of the time, presidencies in America at least last 4 years, that also contributes to our stability. Because if right now President Trump is not everyone's flavor, President Trump isn't even my flavor. Truly, I mean, I don't say this negatively. The Antichrist is just the one that is not anointed, but he is the limelight right now. The world is in love and infatuated with President Trump. President Trump is going to work my will regardless of him being the Antichrist or not. I'm God. I'm not afraid of working with the devil himself or anybody. I'm not saying Trump is the devil. That's not what I meant. What I mean is, I don't have anything off the table when it comes to me. I'm working for my creation, period. If I see something that warrants my influence or my hand in it, then I'm going to do that. Right now, PT is leading America. That was America's choice. They voted. You see what I mean? America voted. They said, God, this is your guy. We picked him. We hope you like him. We hope you work through President Trump, and we hope that you are going to bring prosperity to America and security and sovereignty. As God, I say, okay, that's your pick. I'm going to do my hardest to try to work through him. And as you know, sometimes things are going off good. Other times, it's going to be hard to rein President Trump in. I'm very concerned about Greenland. I do not want military action on Greenland. And again, if this is a deal killer, I would rather walk away keeping our friendship with NATO, Denmark, and Greenland intact wholeheartedly. And we just, as the Americas, we have to just figure it out, right? We have to figure it out. And I do believe, I'm very confident, that we could establish some type of bipartisan understanding where maybe if America was to put assets, just, military assets on maybe the north part of Greenland where it's not inhabited, and then maybe a 50-50 co-partnership between Denmark's mining co. and then allowing some U.S. Corporations to come in and assist with the mining. I'm saying I think there are agreements to be made. I'm not wrathful. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be better for all of you. True. And using the military threats, that's not American. That's not what we do. The American military stands and speaks for itself. Any and every country knows that if they're tyrants, if they're dictators, if they're land grabbers, if they're people abusers, if they're squanderers, if they're drug dealers, if they're murderers, those are the people that are enemies' target. Those are the people that America, the eagle of America, and me as God above that eagle, we look down and go, no, that ain't happening. And as God, that ain't happening on my creation, but it starts with America, guys. True. So Iranians, I suggest that moving forward, if you do decide to go with your Shah, if that's truly what the Iranian people want, then that's your desire, okay? I would just like to ask, be open to the country, such as the United States, be open to us, be open to our consulting. Be open to our consulting. Because Rubio, Witkoff, even Kushner for that matter, those boys are very well versed in foreign policy. And at the minimum, they are law-abiding, and they're going to share some wonderful tips and tricks. Not tricks in a bad way, but ways to get a free democracy underway. And they're going to also help you establish your exports. I mentioned this on the other video. I think a great export, you know, the land, the deserts in Iran are really full of like stone. What's happening right now all across America and even in Europe is a lot of people are doing home remodels. They're building new or they're refurbishing old. So tile, stone tile, especially Persian type, very sought after. Very sought after. That's an export boom, right? You have oil as an export boom. You have quite a few. I don't have my list on me, but I'm saying Iran should very well be in the top 10 successful nations in the world with the right leadership. And its citizens should be in, again, the top 10 for overall happiness. If you looked at pictures of Iran back in the 30s and 40s, guys, Iran at one point was absolutely gorgeous. Now, that was under a constitutional democracy, but again, the people did not agree with the king's direction. Now, if the people don't agree with the king's direction, and then you're talking about a legacy, so what happens when this Shah dies in 20 or 30 years, or whatever, I'm saying 50 years, let's say. When this Shah dies, who then takes the throne? If you don't like that person in a kingship type of situation, you don't even have an option to get someone new. You see what I mean? You're stuck with that person until they die. This is actually what propels things like assassinations or overthrowing governments. So my fear is that if it does not actually go to a democracy where you have a president elected every 4 to 8 years, right? If they get 2 terms, 8 years. So having that situation means that if the worst person in the world gets elected, your hope is 8 years. You have to bear this burden for 8 years. Most of the time, only 4 years. If you're very unhappy, and a lot of the citizens are unhappy too, then you get rid of the person in 4 years and try again. That's kind of the beauty of America, is you don't ever have to sit with the same flavor, right, for too long. It's going to give you an opportunity to change flavor. But you have the protections of the Constitution that ensure the laws that mean the most, matter the most. Immigration is a federal law. That those things aren't touched. But things like where's money spent, right? How are we going to govern our food supply, our water supplies? How do we combat wildfires, right? I can tell you we don't combat wildfires by Gavin Newsom's California fraud schemes. I can promise you that. We don't ensure safety of people like Barbara Good, I think is what her name was, or something good. That's not ensuring the safety of your people. Your people had the thought that they could follow around federal enforcement agents doing a job, and because their mayor didn't tell them, that's against the law. Nobody's telling these people what they're doing is illegal, and then they get killed. Do you understand? That to me is nefarious. That's nefarious. That is, part of your job is you're supposed to let your constituents know, guys, you can't do this because it's against the law. You could end up killed. If you interfere with a federal officer in his business, something could go wrong. You don't want to do that. Guys, most of you would go on hunting trips and take more responsibility for safety than these protesters. So that, again, as God, I go into spirit and I check things. I have monitoring spirits all over the earth, but I myself can go and check. And what do I see? I see in people's hearts, minds, bodies, and souls that for every fabric of their existence, they truly do feel that what they're doing is right. And when I go and I check the mind that says, I drive normal because it's the safe thing to do. I don't go and drink poison because that kills me. The high mind is essentially, right, your better self, the self that knows righteousness. When I go and investigate these protesters, they genuinely don't know that what they're doing is breaking the law because their leaders are inciting violence. Whose fault is this? Is it the ignorance of the child, the protester? Or does it fall on the house manager, the Jacob Frys, and the Newsoms and the Waltzes and all these other clowns, right? Where does the blame fall on? It blames on the leader. Not only as being the leader of heaven, but the creator of earth. I know a lot about leadership, but even outside of that, as a carnal male, I'm not a man, I'm God, but being a male on earth, I have held carnal leadership positions, and I can tell you, if so much as the copier breaks, guess whose fault it is? The leader. If someone's not at work on time, guess whose fault? I'm saying, when you're in a corporate world, being the leader, you get the glory and the praise, but you also get the shit end of the stick. Forgive my language, but you do. And I don't know where this mentality comes from people that I've mentioned, where, again, they can be open terrorists against America while still holding a constitutional position for them to simply enforce and enact law. You're not a lawmaker. You see what I mean? You're not a lawmaker. You're a special interest tyrant trying to undercut American sovereignty. Thus, you should be kicked out of the country like the illegals, in my opinion. Okay. Moving on to our next couple ones. So, just wrapping that up. Let me put some check marks here. So, recapping, Greenland, I'd like to see more talks. Let's have an open forum talk with leaders of Denmark and Greenland and NATO and the European Union if we need to. Let's have a conversation. And instead of President Trump exercising his mouth or his will, why don't we have an open forum conversation and let it be broadcast to both sides of the pond? Let the Europeans, Greenland, Denmark, and Americans hear the conversation surrounding Greenland. Transparency is enormous when it comes to me. I'm transparent in my marriage, in my being as God, but also as a father. I'm very transparent. I have nothing to hide. And I teach that to my children. We don't keep secrets. My wife is very transparent with me about everything, even down to things that most people, that's another thing, most common people would probably say your family's over-transparent. That's for a reason, guys. We're not good on the surface, guys. We're good to the core. And when you're truly good to the core, and I say this a little bit of depreciationly to myself, but when you're truly as good to the core as I am, my wife is, and my children are, I kind of run my mouth a little bit, or have, because my will is steadfast for goodness. That's a fact. A lot of times in the past, I've ran my mouth really to show the world a mirror of what you all look like to me. And I can tell you, what you've seen of yourselves, you do not like it. That is why I show it to you. Because like a father, in a righteous way, is mocking his children, right? Who may be doing wrong. I do that to the world. I mock you people so you get to see a reflection of what you look like to me. And instead of you passing on and having to go back through a life to try to get it right, I'm trying to get you now before you pass on so you can move on to move on to heaven. You don't want to have to come back down here. You want to move on to heaven. But before I'm done, This place is going to be like heaven, or at least close to it, like the Garden of Eden. Because the human experience is supposed to be mostly good. Mostly good. And your stumbling blocks at times are there to build your character. They're there to engage your critical thinking skills. They're there to challenge your righteousness at times. Okay? So if we are constantly, and we should never be siding with the wrong way, but as of right now, most of the world is just doing what it wants, or they're siding with whatever's easy. Right isn't easy. Most of the time, being right or doing the right thing isn't easy. It's not meant to be. It's meant to challenge you. And when you walk out through the fire unscathed because you stuck to your guns of righteousness, you get a reward from me. So let's broadcast a discussion around Greenland. Let's hear from Greenlanders. Let's present, and here's how I'd like to see it done. I want to see the problems being stated in an open forum. Russia and China have openly expressed their interest in Greenland. Let's ask Greenlanders how they feel about that. Let's see what their thoughts are. Let's run a scenario through Denmark and Greenlanders. If Russia decided tomorrow to come into Greenland, what is the next move by Denmark and Greenland? Would it be, at that time, applicable for the United States to then take military action, and then essentially the battlefield is brought to Greenland, beautiful Greenland? I don't want any war, but I certainly don't want any war to be broken out on a front that close to Canada. One, Canada relies heavily on the United States, but America as a whole. Because if Russia decided to put a silo, or even at that point, they could have ground-to-air missiles. Can't think of the name of them. Anyway, like ways to shoot intercontinental ballistic missiles from Greenland. That shortens the time between impact in the United States. That opens up all the United States virtually to any and all weaponry. Now, unlike Israel, we don't have an Iron Dome. So in regards to that, Israel is 10 years ahead of us, and we don't have a David Sling situation. So that would really be heavily dependent upon our Air Force, upon our intelligence committees. What I mean is, the potential for a really big problem or a really big disaster is just right around the corner if we leave Greenland unchecked. So instead of threatening military action against Greenland because we're America and we can, I don't want to do that. I want to have an open forum. Let's get opinions of everybody, and let's bring out the concerns to the public. Let's make it a thing. Let's make it a thing. Because again, I think the purchase of Greenland, I don't even know what the price tag would be on it, because again, there are many veins of untapped resources, but that's to that point, right? We need it strategically, and if we don't get it strategically, then maybe the conversation really surrounds around NATO. So maybe we should be having the conversation of saying NATO in general needs to chip in an additional 3% on top of what you're committing to now. And I don't mean 3% in 2 years. I mean 3% starting February. We need to be chipping in, not us, NATO, the rest of NATO, chip in an additional 3%. This is going to go for building up of Greenland for Greenlanders, or for NATO in general, right? The NATO Pact Alliance, to set up defensive and troops of any, whatever, right? If you want to send French troops, British troops, I don't care. Netherlands troops. Point is, NATO is supposed to be a family. Let's act like a family. PT is not the dictator of NATO. PT, I'm trying to keep him on the track, on the leash, and on the right path. It's difficult. Okay, so we're going to put Greenland to bed. ICE operations, voter ID must be a law. Illegals cannot vote. Dead people cannot vote. This is a problem square with Democrats, and personally, if it's found in any city, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, if there's voter fraud, investigations need to go through every political ring that exists. That's how I look at it. These things must be taken so seriously that I want politicians to lay in bed at night sweating, making sure their righteousness is on point. Because if there is unrighteousness like voter fraud occurring in any election, pump the brakes, federal investigation, everyone's involved, no one's being elected until we get to the bottom of this. One illegal vote, I as Elohim say, we stop the train and you got to redo this. Because the whole premises of America being free and sovereign depends upon American citizens' vote. Not illegal citizen votes. Not fake votes. Not dead votes. If at any time any politician is caught voter tampering or tampering with votes, using dead vote, whatever, that's punishable by that is punishable and subjected to time in the federal penitentiary. All right, it's at 1:10. I'm going to take my next break, but I still have more to cover. So today will be a bit of an extended session, but I have a lot to get out of the way. Okay, and we're back for part 2 of this. So we covered Greenland in thoroughness. I think we should have open forums, both sides of the pond. Let's also do that because it's going to reassure we don't need fear striking Europe or America. And this is not a totalitarian regime. This is not a fascist regime. No matter how or what PT's desire is, it is ultimately my will that is going to be done. So that's another thing. If none of my videos go viral, or if really the masses don't pick up on who I am, that I'm already here, I'm doing my job, and I am controlling the world actors in such a way that I'm orchestrating these things to my tune. That's why I get kind of bothered by people saying, well, President Trump. Guys, if there is an actionable item, you need to be praying to me, Yahweh, Elohim, Yahuwah. That is my name, that is my being, that is my spirit. And that is who receives honor, praise, worship, and glory for the things that you see being done. When my glory is being given to presidents or potential kings or really any person of the mankind kingdom, it's quite offensive to me. How it feels as God is, I put all the food down in the bowls in the morning, but if all the dogs go around congratulating each other for the food that I put down, I look at that as the stupidity. So please direct that, and that's what I mean. Even if you don't want to get into the name, which I appreciate, because at the end of the day, my name is my name, but it is also sacred. You should really only invoke my name when you're in prayer, when you're in intercession, when you are a individual needing to go through something, right? Or again, I have a lot of a lot of my congregations or constituents. They do early morning prayer that sets them up for a good day. And again, my angels are out working with these people in a good way, keeping them out of trouble, so on and so forth. So I'm just saying, try to direct, that, and that's what I mean. So just stopping at God. If you're in America, I get it. You're appropriating that to me, one way or the other, right? Whether it's me being God working through Jesus or me being God working through, prophets, either way. The praise, honor, and worship, and glory, it goes unto me and my spirit. And that spirit is me. Like, my flesh was made around the spirit. Not that my flesh was made and the spirit inhabited. So it's a bit of a difference. You see what I mean? Moving on, though. So I would highly suggest that as this process continues, with or without American intervention, which there will be, I don't know what kind of talks Khomeini is wanting to do at this point, because it's far beyond him just now saying he's going to stop nuclear ambition, because not even my fear. What I know will happen is if we engage in talks with Khomeini, and if he says he's going to disengage with his military programs, that's a fugazi. That regime has one prerogative, and that is to kill Jews and establish the Islamic statehood in all the Middle East. That's where the problems arise. So for the last 2.5 to 3 years, I have been beating my chest, screaming at Israel, like, to do what America's finally doing. And a part of my frustration and divorce with Israel is because they don't listen to me. They would rather ignore me, Elohim, and wait for a man to then tell them what to do. And that, again, is one of the most furious things that happens to me, is as the good father, as the good shepherd, but also the creator, you know, the scales of justice, all these wonderful things that my book teaches you about me, for them to just see everywhere that people in suits get my glory, people in power, that I gave them that power, and they think they're higher than me. Like, that's really bothersome. And personally, I think it actually adds to my clout, that the things that I do, I don't even have to leave my home. I don't even have to leave my own space. If I need to mobilize a person, place, or a thing, I can do it from the shower. Like I'm saying, I can do any and all things simply by my will. So please don't give glory to presidents or kings or prime ministers, because if you're receiving that glory, that means I'm not. And that doesn't motivate me to want to help you further. So when people are asking, please God, help me, please God, you know, I hear those things and I will. But then the minute I do, I hear, oh, praise President Trump, oh, thank goodness. And it's like, guys, like, you make it feel nasty. Right? You make it feel nasty. Like, this is supposed to be a monogamous relationship. I am your God, I am your Christ, I am all in one. That's a benefit. That means when you're in prayer, you don't have to worry about saying 5 different names, because I'm not 5 different people. You don't have to worry about, you know, that's what I mean. Like, I've given you guys the easiest, shortest, absolute truth possible. And religious people are balking it up. Political people are balking it up. You guys are overcomplicating stuff. Alright. So Iran, we've covered that. I do hope you guys do break the chain. But I would highly suggest you think about what you're doing when you're instituting a king, because if you do that, no time in history do kings just step off the throne if the people aren't happy. If the people ever have something that they want to do and the king is disagreeing with it, then that's where you have another revolt. I don't want to have another revolt in 10 years against this Shah. You see, we stop, just like you don't have abortion problems if you don't have premarital sex. You're not going to have revolts and revolutions and uprisings that cause senseless death, cause more destruction of infrastructure, but also letting dictators and tyrants take the world stage. Guys, this is a poo-poo situation. We should be poo-pooing that. So, moving on, Mexico. So, Mexico's President Sheinbaum, I appreciate your cooperation with PT, but I would like for Mexico to focus on economic growth and then safety for citizens. So virtually the same playbook I'm using with America, I think Mexico could take one on the page, because believe it or not, Mexico is about 770,000 square miles. It is the 13th largest country in the world. Mexico ranks 11th in the world with a population of more than 120 million people. There are 31 states as well as Mexico City. It doubles, which also doubles as the capital. Economically, the nation has a significant nominal gross domestic product, or known as GDP, of about 1.99 trillion, which is actually really good. And it makes the country the 15th strongest global economy. So, projections into 2050, as it stands, approximate the country has the potential of being the 5th largest economy in the world. And the strong economy has a lot of contributing sectors, including quantities of natural resources, such as minerals like gold, copper, petroleum, silver, and others like forestry. So there's a lot of economical potential in Mexico. It just really needs to be harnessed and under the right leadership. So, Sheinbaum, if you're willing to work with America on especially the border, if we can solve the border problem for us then I promise our cooperation with assisting Mexico, because you guys are our neighbors, and we want to have great relationships with our neighbors. So truly, I would love to see more trade established with Mexico. You have a lot to offer us, and we have a lot to offer you. But it does start at security, right? A parable on this would be, let's say I'm the grocery store. The grocery store is like America, and I purchase a lot from a lot of vendors. But if I have a vendor that every time I purchase a bag of fruit, I'm getting fruit flies. I want the fruit, not the flies. You see? So if every time I'm purchasing something from Mexico, it comes with 500 illegals, that's a problem for me. I'm not motivated to buy from you. So Shane Baum, if you can get your security, and that's going to start with you eliminating your own cartels. And cartels have been operating in South America for the last 90 years, and they have been heavily operating in Mexico as the rule of law. That can't happen. That can't happen. The good news, though, is Mexico's infrastructure exists as a democracy. So you guys already have the word. Now, you just really need to enforce it. So if you need assistance with that, right, you could still work with our border czars and work with America Border Customs, and we would be able to help work something out between Mexico that is going to be beneficial. Because remember, guys, it really does. It starts with safety of citizens, and it starts with citizens having upward mobility. Like, that's what they want. Citizens want to have a future. What is absolute hamperance to any society is if a family doesn't have a future for their kids to go, if they don't have promises of a better tomorrow, and if they don't have a true reality in which those things are able to be fulfilled. So, again, next, ICE operations. Remember, folks, these are federal agents. Asher and I were having a break together, and she brought up a wonderful point, because it really makes her sick, too, hearing American terrorists being actively supported by governing institutions like mayor, senator, governors. Like, that should not exist. That is dictatorship. That's Maduro's special interest. There's no place in American democracy for those things. That's not the case. There is never going to be on a law to vote about illegal versus illegal. These are foundational, founding father level, constitutional level truths that America stands evident with. That is something that we build strongly on the foundation. I'm the cornerstone of America, so those things are built and founded upon me and my word. My Bible in whatever shape or form is the actual liturgy. It is the foundation that was poured when America was incepted. So if you want to think about when I brought the Israelites out of the desert and into Canaan and established Israel, that was me as their Elohim giving them land to do something good with it. And at the end of the day, it was supposed to be my home and have a temple. I've wiped all that off because almost 4 years now, and Israel still hasn't even sent me a fruit basket. So I'm assuming they just don't like me. That's fine. When pilgrims came over from the Mayflower, they were on a mission and a purpose. And that mission and that purpose was to be led by me, Yahweh Elohim. And that time it was, again, through, I'm not going into theology, but basically they wanted to come to the New World. They wanted to worship openly and freely without persecution. And then America became locked and sovereign because there was a king that was imposing his will unfairly and unjustly into the New World. The rest is history. I suggest you learn it. But there is in no way that illegal immigrants are going to wreck that system, and American elected officials that are supporting lawlessness, that are supporting domestic terrorism, they must be handled by the rule of law. So, voter ID, absolute must, absolute law. The Somali fraud, this is just what I am tearing open, these wickedness. I'm tearing open this lawlessness. This is black-handed affairs that are not at all righteous. The Somalis openly have even said in their testaments that they've given their votes to the Democratic Party in exchange for immunity. They have given their votes to a particular person or party in exchange for immunity, gifts, money, or community safety for their numbers. That is what happened with Maduro in Venezuela. The cartels were saying, we're going to make sure you win the election as long as you make sure I can traffic my drugs. Illegals are saying, Democrats, you have my vote as long as you give me immunity, as long as you make sure my city is sanctuary. And then the Democrats, this is called the deal with the devil. This is not good. This is not only damnable by the United States Constitution, the United States laws, the code of ethics, but it is also damnable by me, God, Elohim. So, before I begin coming and taking people out, this is my warning. Clean it up. You better find yourself on the right side of the law. And again, these are all policy-based, guys. I could care less if there's a black governor, a white governor, a Chinese governor, Iranian governor, a Jewish governor. Guys, I could really care less. An Eskimo governor. Race does not affect me in any way. I'm God. I created all men and women and diversity for the world on purpose. But that's where the conjoined effort of American law brings us all together as Americans. What brings us together as Americans is the law. That's where a white man, a black man, a Chinese woman, a Chinese man, a Somalian man, a Mexican woman, it doesn't matter, right? Throw 50 of every culture in the room and they all have a unique story to tell. But you know what? The one thing that brings them all together, the one thing that says I'm American is my story is I moved here legal and I made a life for myself and my kids. Legal, L-E-G-A-L, the right way, like Nikola Tesla did it the right way. And that family built a beautiful business and now their family's thriving. But what makes them American is the obedience unto the law of the land in which they should love, cherish, and at times protect. So, by showing lawlessness, and again, this is also to be reverberated everywhere, the rules of peaceful protest in this country require permitting. The protesters stay in one location. By harassing law enforcement, this is where Asher comes in, we were talking about it. By harassing law enforcement, you're breaking the law, you're obstructing justice, and you're impeding investigation. Now imagine if your local sheriff is doing an investigation and you had pissed off family members for whatever reason. They're constantly in their face. They're pushing things around. They're obstructing justice and evidence. Well, the sheriff would arrest those people, hands down. And it happens. It happens. All the time. People go and try to impede investigations and they're arrested for obstruction of justice. That court docket's a big one. The same rules apply to people that are following ICE. Understand, you are not protected by the Constitution if you're protesting in places that you're not allowed, but following federal agents is against the law as well. So again, those laws are there to protect you. If you're breaking those laws and your governors and mayors are saying that's okay, and then someone dies like Mrs. Good, the blood isn't on the agent's hands. The blood is on the mayor, is on the senator, is on the governor who didn't tell their people about the law. That's dumb. If one of, if one of my kids keeps wearing flip-flops to school and they keep getting sent home or in trouble because of it, they're getting in trouble, right? But I, as the parent, should have known the law of the school and said, well, my kid shouldn't be wearing flip-flops to begin with, so I'm going to make sure he goes to school with shoes on. Lawmakers of their individual states or cities or whatever should be doing the same thing. Folks, stop protesting in places you're not allowed. This is the rule, this is how you need to do it, and this is the right way. If you do it the wrong way, you're going to be persecuted by the law. If you're obstructing justice, or worse, if you're blocking federal law enforcement, you can end up hurt or killed. It's not a game, guys. So, again, the Somali fraud, right? They literally gave votes for immunity. That equates to jail time. And not just the Somali fraud, but illegal immigrant voting fraud, dead people fraud. Guys, this all should equate to federal time in jail. Again, U.S. laws are only effective when they are followed by both citizens and political leaders. If people want to protest, then protest for something legal and actually changeable. Immigration laws are not going to change. That's not ever going to change. We don't want to open our borders up to the dregs of the world. We want the brightest, the sharpest, the most contributors to be coming to our land. Our land is sacred. It is sovereign. It is set apart. And then again, following police around, harassing them, it is a criminal, and that is not a legal protest. And for the world, right, when you're seeing the mainstream media following around these protest crowds, as I said, I live in an area where there's 8.8 million people in Central Florida, and there was less than 50 protesters. And when I went into spirit, every single one of them did not know the law, did not really care about America. Half of them were actually paid. Half of them were actually paid. So that again, that's aiding and abetting lawlessness. Gavin Newsom, the gavel is coming down because again, the California fraud is absolutely eye-watering bad. And the guy's fraud, like, that's what I mean. So imagine if there's a fixed amount of money, as everyone in America, hopefully you're paying bills at some level. Fraud happens when essentially you have money leakage. But it's not just leaking for no reason. It's leaking because there are scammers and schemers that are working with politicians trying to create false tracks, and that way the money is redirected to other causes, and then exchange, right, they get the vote. That's illegal. That's criminal. There should be a penitentiary for all of these things, to be honest, because the only way that we're ever going to clean up America and become a model for the rest of the world to follow after is it starts like with the very basics. You guys don't need me, God, to explain this to you, but apparently you do. So again, political stock trades never should be a thing because it's a conflict of interest, guys. You should not be. That shouldn't happen. And it's amazing. If you look at some of these politicians, I mean, how they're not caught for insider trading is beyond me. Because you have people that are making over 1,000% returns on investing. That's insider trading. If that were to happen to any third-party outside firm, I don't like, Goldman Sachs, but I mean, if they were reporting a 1,650% increase on a return, I'm pretty darn sure that there's something's wrong with that, right? Because that ain't the case. Warren Buffett himself would tell you that there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that because if politicians are receiving insider information, that's called insider trading. Now, if anyone ever has watched the movie Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, back in the 80s, served a long prison sentence for insider trading. The exact same things that politicians are doing today. So that needs to be completely cut out. That crap is not going to fly. Okay. Let's see. Alright, where are we at here? We covered Mexico. Okay, let's see. Russia. So here's my beef with Russia. I understand it from the point that Russia wanted Ukraine back. I don't understand it from the perspective that there was a path that I made for peace and it was not seized upon. Anytime someone is directly defying me, Elohim, causes a rift. Because that means that I have went through all the options and I have found the one that's not only going to appease both parties, it's going to save lives, and it's going to be able to be implemented and then turned around. I want Russia to become better. The Russian people want Russia to be better. The Russian people, like all people, have the same desires as most human beings do. They want food. They want water. They want shelter. They want safety. They don't want to fear their government. They want to work with their government. But likewise, when their government is sending able-bodied men and women to be slaughtered like pigs, that's not protecting your government. And what's the cause? What's the end game? Russia, you can barely manage the mother country as it stands territory-wise. Why would you want to open up more land at the sacrifice of your men, right? You're destabilizing your economy and you're sinking yourself further into a hole that's going to be really hard economically to fight out of now. Because you're making enemies with not only the U.S., not only with Europe, but most of the economical progress side of the world is going to leave you behind. That includes science and technology that I, as Elohim, when I feel comfortable with the righteousness, I'm going to have to start passing over technological ideas, innovations, and blueprints to great minds. When I do that, I want to be fairly distributive in who gets what. I don't want to just bring everything for America, and I don't want to just bring everything for Israel. I want to be able to bring things for the whole world. Because as Elohim, what I want is, I want to look at every country, every nation, and I want to say, yeah, hey, Iran, that's where I got my stone for my bathroom. You know, I'm saying whatever nation it is, right? Whether it be natural resources, whether it be, what production your people are able to do, what technologies you're able to innovate with, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. Not fighting senseless war. And not everything can be solved with peace. That's true. Sometimes war is inevitable. But when war is inevitable, the next best decision is to make it as... Sometimes speed is what makes it painless. It's never going to be painless. War is never painless. But sometimes the speed in which action can be taken is usually the better way. Let's see here. Yeah. And as far as the Venezuela oil thing goes, Venezuela, I think, is like the third or fourth largest producer of oil. But they have, it's not as clean or as pure or high grade as like Middle Eastern oil, for example. So that means that it has less usage, or it has to be more money poured in for refinement. This causes an issue on the miner side of things. But that should not shy away from having, oil companies essentially coming in there, fixing operations, because what happens is the infrastructure is not being cared for properly, because most of those resources were going back to Cuba. Cuba is another headache. And Marco Rubio not to be the president of Cuba, that is ridiculousness. Marco Rubio is a constituent for the United States, and I, as Elohim, appreciate his talent, appreciate his tenure, and appreciate, his efforts in that. Cuba, much like the rest of the world, right, needs to wake up and smell the Cuban coffee, because that type of setup, right, this is not growth. And we cannot hamper growth of any nation anywhere on earth because of the desires, wants, and needs of dictators. It's not how this works. The people's voice must be heard, and economic help is where the world comes into play. That's literally where we sit down at the table with, righteous parties, and we say, guys, these are some of the earth's problems. How are we going to solve them? We have God on the throne. He's put resources in our earth. He's tasked us with fixing our own bullshit, and he's even said he's going to help us. Is that not worth more? Is it not worth more working with God, working with resources, and learning about your next epoch, your next era, right? When I'm playing my game Civilization, I just transitioned from the ancient era to the advancement era, or whatever they called it. The era of progress, essentially. So the same thing's happening now in the real life scape. Is we're going to be advancing away from the war stuff, away from this, crappy stuff. And we're going to get into prosperity, not only economically, but health, right? We wouldn't have a health insurance crisis if we had people in better health, A. B, if we had 14.2 less million people on welfare. And then the ones that we did have on welfare at least are our people. And then we have a surplus of trade coming in to help offset the cost of those programs. That is actually going to free up the next 90% of our society to begin pursuing purpose, to find happiness within their purpose, but then economically they're serving purpose, which is going to shower their family in prosperity. And then they're going to be able to climb the ranks, working hard, having good ethics and good morals. Those are the things that should get you to the top. Righteousness is what gets you to the top. There should be no other way to get to the top other than righteousness. Having good moral code, good moral ethics, being law-abiding, not because you're a puppet, not at all. Quite the opposite. Puppets are the ones that are stupid and that are too stupid to understand the law. They're too stupid to understand how things are put in place to protect you. I last night was sitting up, and I mean, it was about 1:30. I couldn't sleep. Most of the time I can't. So I went on the back porch. It was starting to get cold. It was about 45 degrees. And I'm pretty much living in the ghetto now. I mean, have been. It's not like the ghetto, but it's kind of the ghetto now. But it's like 1:30 in the morning, and I hear this car. I mean, just flooring it. I mean, he was going so fast. And there's a stop sign just about 4 houses down. And people blow the stop sign, and there have been accidents there. Thank my own name for that not, ever happening to us. But this car floors it, and he just blows the stop sign. Stop signs are laws. That is a direct example of a law that is there to protect you. And that person disregarded the law because he felt that, he should be able to go 90 down a 15 mile an hour road, but he's doing 90, blowing a stop sign. Thank goodness, in spirit, my angels were clearing away, because he could have crashed into someone doing 90, and then there would have been no chance for anybody. What kind of selfishness are people in this world that do that? What kind of selfishness is it for people to go put themselves in the line of fire and danger for unjust causes? That's stupid. Men and women of America, don't be political puppets for the Democrats. Don't be political puppets for the Republicans. Be an open-minded, free-thinking human being that I made every one of you to be. This world is currently under renovation. But I, as Elohim, whether you know it or not, am working tirelessly for you all. Truly, and I mean that. Me and my Asherah, when she's not working her carnal job to pay our bills, me and her are collaborating constantly. Constantly. We're taking issues that are happening day to day, and her and I are round-tabling them. I'm taking them upstairs with counsel. I'm getting very, very wise counsel. Counsel of others that have done this way before my fleshly incarnation. As God, I mean, again, I was born about 14.8 billion years ago. But that's in spirit. So I'm very, very mature for a spirit. And as my incarnation now, I'm 37 years old. So I am only listening and corresponding with myself, meaning my spirit. But when I go upstairs, I am fully me, and I counsel with very wise advisors. So I'm trying to pass that on to my earth. Because trust me, guys, the council wants nothing more than the success of the earth. Because instead of death, demolition, and destruction, I want to say, let's put a bookmark, but let's start writing our next chapter. Let's really start writing our next chapter. Because if you were to flip the paradigm, instead of trying to fix that damn fence, I've done patch that fence. I've tried to paint that fence. I have tried. It looks like a Frankenstein. It looks ugly, right? It's time for a brand new fence. But I'm still going to use the bones of the design, right? The new fence is going to go right where the old one is. It's going to be made with better material. It's going to be straight again and look good, and it's going to serve its purpose of protection and duty and lasting through storms. That's what I, as Elohim, am doing for the world. The bones that we have are strong. The American Constitution, the laws of our land are strong. We just need to get the people to sober up, and we need to get, I hate to say it, but the lawless Democrats need to simmer down, get out of office. We need to get back to what real Democrats used to fight for. That's what I mean. You go back 50 years, there were some things that Republicans and Democrats were virtually unrecognizable in most policies regarding law, because that's it. Like, they were all on board when it came to the Constitution, when it came to the laws, the federal laws of our country, most state laws of our country. I'm saying those were things that Democrats and Republicans were like, they could fight all day long about a healthcare bill, or fight all day long about, you know, how much economics should go here or go there, or how, like, you know what I mean? Those are the issues that lawmakers really do. Not upending civilization on behalf of illegals. That's a new age thing, guys. And I know when I say new age, a lot of people don't understand how I view time. Guys, I feel like 1940 was just right around, was just yesterday. The 1850s were just a little bit before that. Gosh, the founding of America was just, gosh, last week. To me, that's true. I mean that. You know? So many things, I genuinely mean that, is, and so when I feel like I'm coming hard and fast, it's because I am, because I know what is capable. I know what humans are capable of. But I also know that, how do I explain this one? So maybe that's my last one. The only thing I can really come up with is, like, if you shoot for the stars, you may not get there, but at least you'll land on the moon, right? If citizens are shooting to be righteous all the way to the top, right, in alignment with me, my commandments, with the laws of our country, and they're willing to fall into purpose, right? By going above and beyond, your country is going to be so highly elevated above the rest that the rest are going to look up with good envious eyes and go, you know, we can do that too. Iran's going to go, you know, we can do that too. And other countries that at this point, so I mean, if you want to help your fellow citizens, if you want to help the world, I'm here to tell you, as the birther of worlds, the only thing in existence that can truly bring peace on earth, happiness, prosperity, are laws. That's a fact. That's why the commandments are so important to me. The laws that the earth's gravitational fields, the electric, the fire, all these things are based on natural physical law that I've created. That is a direct representation of the order in which they come. But the chaos that I bring with weather and all those same forces, I bring that chaos because I want you to see the reflection of your actions. It's reflected in the earth domain. If I'm unhappy emotionally, the weather's unsettled. If I'm unhappy with people, U-Hauls are driven through crowds of Iranians screaming President Trump's name. I didn't sit there and dream that up. But with my dissatisfaction and my unhappy heart, those things happen. So if I can get the country, okay, let's put God first in everything. Let's pray before we're opening up sessions, but let's mean it. Let's not say a hokey prayer And I don't mean in the name of Jesus, in the name of Yahweh. Because you know what? If you went back 2,000 years and you were to ask Jesus what's the most important thing, he would have not said his name. He would have said my name. And people that think they're cute calling me Jesus, guys, that name is offensive to me. It offends me because it would offend the Yeshua. It would truly offend him. And by saying you know Jesus or Jesus is the way, all that tells me is you don't know me. And that name does not bring me any glory. Like, I know this is kind of a mind-blowing moment, but like, as the real Christ, as the real Jesus, that name brings me no glory. That name has no power. The power that truly saves, the power that brings to existence all things is my name, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh, Adonai, Hashem, not Hashem or Adonai, those are nicknames, but I mean my name. The name that Jesus died for was not Jesus. It wasn't even Yeshua. It was mine, Yahweh, Yahuwah. And those are dialects, right? Take your choice. But no, it's me. Point is, so putting God first, putting me first, in spirit, in truth, understanding, and trust. You got to trust. You know? Last one. My wife, Asherah, made last night these, she tried them. They're so good. She made these homemade roast beef sliders. Gosh, they were so good. We had those in tater tots. Because you took like fresh roast beef, and it was like a Monterey cheese, some seasonings, and I don't know what kind of sauce or whatever she made on them. But anyway, it was a new one we were trying. Cameron, he's almost 10, but he's 9 right now. You know, he's kind of picky. And he likes green beans and certain, like we do a green every night. But I'm saying he doesn't like broccoli. But he has this narrative in his head that I'm always trying to sneak broccoli in. So he's super aware. Well, we're sitting down and we're eating, and he's kind of untrusting. He's looking at it, you know, he's sizing up the little roast beef slider, and he's putting his nose up, but it's because it's new, right? He's like, I want what's comfortable. In this paradigm, that's my religious people going, but I'm not comfortable with that. I want Jesus, right? You're going to have to learn to be comfortable. That's the point of this. Because I want you to understand, as the grand chess player, even the name, even the fake name Jesus is for a reason unto me. Because I know for 100% fact, when people are using a false name, they don't know me. That means there's work to be done. That means there's work to be done. And there's a lot of work to be done. I've just gotten started. I'm not even at a full 1% of accomplishment yet. So, like, these really are the moments that man and God together can forge something that has never been done before. Let me, your Elohim, the Elohim of the world, of creation, of the Bible, of the Israelites and the God of the Christians, let me take this special place that I created and let me help you advance to the next level. I don't want to destroy so much hard work because of a few bad apples. That's not fair. And I truly am fair and just. So, all right, an hour and 53, I think that is quite a bit for a Monday. But I do believe that it was all very much worth it and warranted. So, I will cut it off from there, get ready for my own lunch, and then kid pick up here shortly. So, I hope everybody has a good day. And, you know, I'd like to see, again, more glory. If anything, just thank you, God. You know, we don't have to use the fake name, and you don't have to use necessarily my real name. But if you're in America, the land of the free, one nation, under God, I'll take that. I will take that. I'll take that with a smile. It's better than making me feel irritated or upset or, you know, it derails me from things that matter, like getting this place in shape. So, all right, guys, have a good Monday. We will see you tomorrow.